Welcome to another episode of Buc What You Heard. My name is Gene, aka Super Heavyweight, and I'll be joined by special guest Peter Blake. And Peter, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 5, the Sports Web. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense from 4 to 5 on WTAN 1340 AM.
Yeah,
Pretty
and I
cool,
really,
right?
yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. I remember when me and you were on Spreecast doing shows, and look how everything's turned out for us here. And I'm really excited to have you on, and let's get right to it. And we've got a week under our belts of camp, and what's the vibe in St. Pete, Tampa area right now?
I think everybody, Gene, is really looking forward to this first preseason game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Minnesota Vikings. I know I am. Right now, it's at a fevered pitch of excitement for the Buccaneers because they want to see what Jameis Winston, what this new offense is going to do. And even though it is a preseason game, you hear down here from Lovie Smith that Jameis Winston's going to play more than one quarter or two quarters. So I think everybody down here is pretty excited about it.
And, thinking about that, you go back to the training camp or even to his pro day where Jameis Winston threw a lot of balls that day, which is not normal for your quarterbacks over the past 5-10 years to do that. So I think that he is capable of handling 2 quarters of work, with this first preseason game with no problem.
Yeah, I think the big question is how does he go through his progressions? How does he look in the pocket? Will he know this offense? I don't expect him overnight to know it, but the reports are down here, according to Joe Buck's fan, is that Mike Evans has said that Jameis Winston has learned this offense in 2 days. So if that's true, let's see how he does. And I know one of my big questions about this Tampa Bay Buccaneer team is this new offensive line that may include 2 rookies.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm really excited about. And we've talked about this in the past, and I've talked about this on your show. I am happy when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers can hit on a draft pick, but the fact that they've hit on Jameis Winston, Alec Marpet, and Donovan, and then we haven't even talked about the linebacker or the wide receiver. So these are players that have really contributed in the camp, and I look forward to seeing them contribute even more in preseason. This is how you build the foundation for a winning team.
Yeah, and this was an offensive line that was under siege, pardon the pun, because this is called Siege the Day for the Buccaneers. Hopefully it's not Siege the Winston because they gave up 52 sacks last year, this offensive line alone. So hopefully it improves. And I think a lot of people are looking towards this new offensive coordinator from Atlanta who worked with the same type of offensive lines and still produce results, having Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and Roddy White. So I think, in my opinion, I'm excited about this team. I'm excited about this offense. And I think there's a lot of fans down here that feel the same way as I do.
Yeah, okay. So what I'd like to get from you, because, you and Sean, the Sports Don, you guys talk Bucks football, and you have been since the inception of the show. Who are the top 5 players that you are excited to see and see what they can do to help this team get back to their winning ways?
Well, to me, it's Jameis Winston, number 1 player, because I think he's a franchise transformer. I think he's going to turn this team into a playoff team. That's right. You heard it here first. There's not another Tampa Bay sports personality that will go on here and tell you that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a playoff team. But I'm telling you right now, they're a 10-6 football team. They're going to turn it around. They're going to win the division, and Winston's going to be Rookie of the Year. With that being said, I'm curious to see Donovan Smith and how he does as the left tackle as a rookie on this team. I'm curious to see Ali Marpet at the right guard spot. I'm curious to see George Johnson because you hear a lot of good things about him. And then I'm curious to see how Henry Melton works because Lovie Smith has history with Melton. He's been a Pro Bowler before. He's going to give this Tampa Bay Buccaneer defense a lot of great rotation on the line. And I'm curious to see if Smith will use Melton and McCoy on the line together because then I think you're going to really develop some great pass rush.
Yeah, and with that being said, we have a new member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it was quite a surprise to me. I don't know about you, but when I heard that former Seattle Seahawks defensive tackle McDaniel was available, and the Buccaneers actually went out and got him.
Mhm.
And you were telling me a little bit about a side story on how he ended up coming to Tampa. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, this is in care of JoeBucksFan.com. I don't know if you follow them or go to their website, but very comprehensive Buccaneer coverage. And what they were saying is they asked McDaniel about getting signed with the Buccaneers, and basically what he said was Michael Bennett sold him on coming to Tampa, and they asked him, "Do you think you guys could get back Bennett?" And he was saying he would try, but it seems like Michael Bennett never wanted to leave Tampa. And I have to say, this is probably the worst move in Tampa Bay Buccaneer history, because if you have Michael Bennett right now on this defensive line, that's your edge pass rusher, and yet you don't have him because why? Yet again, Daquan Bowers is on this team. You have faith in this guy. You have faith in him this year, and the same old story remains true. The guy's out of shape. He's not going to make a contribution to this team. He's a bust, and you let Michael Bennett go, which is a proven pass rushing specialist. Ask Steve White, because Steve White said this a couple years ago when I was over at 1010 AM, that Michael Bennett was probably the best defensive lineman that nobody knew anything about. He had all this potential, and yet this organization decided to let him go for no other reason but the fact that Mark Dominic drafted Daquan Bowers in the second round. It makes no sense at all, and it would be so nice that Michael Bennett came back to Tampa. I don't know if it's a possibility because I know he's unhappy with his contract situation there. I know the Seahawks have a lot of cap trouble, and who knows, maybe it's a pipe dream, but if you could get Michael Bennett in the fold along with everything that you have on this line, that would be unbelievable. But going back to the real story here, having Tony McDaniel, he's a 10-year veteran. He's going to be a run stopper. The Seahawks cut him not because his skills deteriorate. That's going to give their defensive line even more depth.
Right. And if you were thinking of, remember we've talked about the Buccaneers in the offseason, even prior to the draft. Do you remember we talked about the defensive line and where we are now? Would you have imagined that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would be where they are now with this defense, with the addition of DJ Swearinger, who we haven't even touched on his skill set, as well as these other players, and getting this rotation together with Clint McDonald, Gerald McCoy. I don't know if Golston, I don't know how he's recovering right now or where he's at health-wise, but I really do think we have a nice rotation, and I think that it may make it easier for our defensive ends to get some pressure on the quarterback, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say this is Tampa 2 defense from 2002. They're a dominating defense because they haven't had a defensive end to go for over double-digit sack totals. But what I can say is that George Johnson in a limited role had 6.5 sacks. In a limited role last year, Jaquez Smith had 6.5 sacks. So it's going to be interesting with both of these players in the fold, how they play in this Lovie Smith defense. The thing I'm really excited about is the fact that you're going to have Gerald McCoy back, you're going to have Henry Melton, you're going to have Clint McDonald, you're adding McDaniel to this mix. And I believe that this Lovie Smith defense in a second year, you always see this, may have a transition process where it's not as rough as it was the first year. So I think you got to be excited if you're a Bucs fan. I mean, not only the defensive line, but you have the linebackers and the safeties, which the cornerbacks and the depth on this team. It seems like it's a lot better. And I look at history as it shows. Lovie Smith, his first year with the Chicago Bears, they were a 5-11 team. The second year that he had that defense in the fold, they were 11-5 team. Now, is that going to happen to the Buccaneers? I told you it's going to be a 10-6 team. I expect this defense to be a big part of that, and it starts all up on that line. It's all predicated on pass pressure. If you can get pressure on the quarterback, then I think you're really starting out this defense the right way.
Absolutely. And to go along with that, I look at the defense last year, at the beginning of last year, where we had Deshaun Golston, we had Mark Barron, we had Mason Foster, and we had Adrian Claiborne, and you look at what this defense has transformed into now. You've got players that are familiar with the Tampa 2. They've played some variation of it wherever they've come from. You've got a lot more speed. You've got players that are not used to letting the ball get past them, but keeping the play in front of them. And what it's all going to come down to is getting everybody to gel, getting everybody to mesh, where this defense will work like it's supposed to. Yeah, like you said, I don't expect to see the 99 or 2000 or even 2002 defense, but what I will say is this defense will be competitive, and it will be a lot better than we've seen in the past 6-7 years.
No, I agree with that. And I think, again, it just comes down to a team being able to have that second year and learning, going through that learning process. Because you look at the last year, that the half of the season, how well this defense played. Remember, this is a team that lost 8 games by 3 points or less. And overall, the last of the year, this team played better. So I think adding these pieces like Melton, adding a Bruce Carter to the middle, adding a McDaniel to that rotation, adding a Sterling Moore to the cornerback depth. Chris Conte really hasn't shown anything in camp, but they expect something out of him. You just trust and know that Lovie Smith and Leslie Frazier are going to get this defense on track, because they have to. Their defensive football team, I think that's going to change this year, because I think Winston being added to the mix is going to make them an offensive football team. But again, it always goes back to the same old thing with Lovie Smith. He wants to have a great defense that can create turnovers.
And the one thing that Lovie Smith has that he has not had, in my opinion, is a quality offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're seeing with Dirk Cotter. I think that Lovie Smith, with his time away from football, has learned to allow the offensive coordinator to handle the offense. Mm-hmm. He can handle the defense and the other coaching duties. But I think that you will not see, I've heard so many people say the Tampa Bears or comments like that Lovie Smith's just doing the same thing that he has done. I disagree. I'm seeing some things out of Lovie Smith that I did not see when he was at Chicago. I think he's learned from a lot of his mistakes. And I definitely, like I said, and I said this even going into the end of the season, Buccaneers would compete for the NFC South, and you would consider them a playoff contender. And you look what they've done. Look what they've done in the offseason. And a lot of the moves that they've made, if you look at the free agency moves this year, they've been low risk, high reward moves. They haven't been, let's dump the bank on this guy and he turns out to be a bust. But they've made low risk, high reward moves, very low profile, low key moves, and there's not a lot of there's not a lot of expectations based on the moves that they've made.
No, I definitely agree with you. I mean, did they? No, they didn't, because maybe the free agents weren't out there. But overall, I think the Buccaneers have filled some of those needs without spending a lot of money on the type of players like a Michael Johnson. I can't even remember the left tackle that was there last year who was a complete flop. But I think the Buccaneers learned from that.
Let me help you with that. That was O'Neal Cousins is who you're making reference to.
Well, O'Neal Cousins, but who was the left tackle last year?
He was horrible. I can't even think of his name.
He was horrible. We want to forget about it. And hopefully Donovan Smith, we think that Donovan Smith is going to be at least average as a rookie. It seems like he has athleticism. But you mentioned a great point with Dirk Cotter. He's an offensive coordinator that we did not have last year. And I think Lovie Smith has embraced the idea that you're going to have to score some points, that you can't run on a 3rd and 9 with your running back. You can't be so conservative. You got to have a quarterback that can make all the throws and win the games for you. And I think Jameis Winston, even though he's not been on the field, he's shown in college that he's been able to do that. He's shown that he can go through his progressions. He's shown that he can make all those throws. And that's the thing you're impressed about. Add on the fact that you have Mike Evans and you have Vincent Jackson and you have Austin Seferian-Jenkins. And maybe if you improve that offensive line, Doug Martin. I got Doug Williams. I got quarterbacks in my mind. Doug Martin gets better with that. Hopeful.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, man. I can't stress enough. And let me give you my top 5. And number 1 is going to be Jameis Winston, who I feel is an instant improvement over what we've had over the past 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we've heard a lot of talk out of camp, a lot of talk from fans about the interceptions. But I tell you what, you're taking things away from our defense when our defense is a good defense compared to last year, and they're supposed to get those interceptions on a rookie. I would be embarrassed if my secondary didn't get an interception on a rookie. There's a problem. There's a big problem. I don't want to put this on the quarterback. Oh, the quarterback is great. You have to look at that defense and those players that are veterans. There aren't a lot of rookies on that defense, and they're supposed to get those plays. They're supposed to knock those balls down, like we've seen Levante David do, like we've seen Alteron Werner do, like we've seen Jonathan Banks do in this camp. So to me, it's a good sign. Jameis Winston is not scared of putting the ball in there when he thinks he can get it in there, and our defense is making plays like they're supposed to.
No, and that's exactly a Lovie Smith type of defense. He wants to create turnovers. He wants to give his offense a short field, and it makes sense that the defense would most likely have the upper hand in camp. I mean, people have talked about Jameis Winston, his interceptions, and you would think that the guy's played 10 games already, and he's only in the first week of training camp. It's like, people, relax. Do what Aaron Rodgers said last year with the Green Bay Packers. Relax. It's just training camp. Let him get all those kinks and let him get all those mistakes out of the way. And let's see what we have the first 5 games or 6 games of the season. Let him go through training camp, because this may be another sign. Even though they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at him with all these blitzes, not only is he going to be able to get these mistakes. Not only is he going to be able to get these mistakes out of the way, but just maybe your defense is a lot better than it was last year. Guess what? Both of those things are great because you get the mistakes out of the way so you don't make them during the regular season. And if your defense is improved, well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This team is going to compete.
That's right. And that's the key. That's what the Buccaneers need. That's what Tampa needs, is that competition. They need to see some wins here. Get people on the bandwagon and let's get the stadium filled up. And like I said, I'm really excited. I haven't seen this much buzz for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for a long time.
Yes.
And I'm excited for that, just like you said. And that's what I'm looking forward to. So next point I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts about the game coming up against the Minnesota Vikings? I know we may see Teddy Bridgewater for a series or two, but what do you expect to see? What are you looking for from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? I know that Minnesota was victorious against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm kind of curious of what you're looking for. Which position battles are you looking to key in on this time?
The offensive line, I mean, I heard something interesting from the great Rick Brown, who works for the Lakeland Ledger. He's a longtime writer, and what he said is there's been a lot of improvement with Garrett Gilkey at the right guard. In fact, right now, Gilkey is listed as number 1 overall. What they can do against a improved defense in the Minnesota Vikings, who I think are going to progressively get better throughout the year because of Mike Zimmer's imprint on it. I want to see if Jameis Winston can handle that pressure, because I believe the Vikings are going to blitz him. They're going to do vanilla blitzes, and he's going to have to go through his progressions. He's going to have to make the right reads. I'm curious to see that. And then I'm curious to see Doug Martin. I'm curious to see if this offense plays for a long time and the offensive line can open up some holes for him. Will you see that explosive nature that you saw a couple years ago when a guy ran for 1,500 yards?
Yeah. And along with that, when you're talking about running back, I'm curious to see what Charles Sims does. We know we drafted him pretty high. I know he was injured the majority of last season, and we saw flashes of him towards the last 3 or 4 games of the season. Now, with that being said, he's got a full season of learning the playbook. Well, not the playbook, but a full season in the NFL under his belt, and he's adjusting to a new offensive coordinator, totally new offense. And let's see if he can make those catches out of the backfield, and let's see if he can really contribute. That's what I'm kind of keying in on for me, is seeing what he's capable of doing.
Yeah, I mean, a 3rd-round pick. I think he's looked upon as being backed and maybe a 3rd down back and do some things that Doug Martin can't. Can catch the ball out of the backfield, has some explosive speed to to him. I mean, a lot of people were comparing him to Matt Forte. Let's see what happens because, like you said, he did have an injury last year, Gene, to his ankle, and that really hampered him throughout the year. So let's see what these running backs are going to do because a lot of people's minds right now, running back is a sore spot. In fact, the Buccaneers were talked about in the offseason being interested, as crazy as it sounds, in Adrian Peterson. So let's put all that to rest. Let's see if Doug Martin, let's see if Charles Sims, let's see if Bobby Rainey, who seems like he's the forgotten man on this team, can really produce and give Lovie Smith's offense a shot of adrenaline, what they needed last year that they didn't have.
All right. Well,
as you can tell, I'm excited about this, okay?
Oh, absolutely,
I'm excited because I tell you right now, last year, at this time, we were talking about a porous offensive line. You were trying to convince me that Mike Glennon and Josh McCown, I got to give it to you. They were the quarterbacks, and you said, give it some time. And I said, look, I'm telling you right now, this is disaster. But I feel like this year, along with all the fans out there attending training camp, and you see.
And you know what? I am going to.
They are excited about this offense.
I'm going to give the devil his due. You are right. And that was me. I was very open about it. I said, let's give it the first 6 games of the season and see where everything goes. I said, give these guys a chance. It's a new offense. And, they had chances. They had opportunities. Right. I mean, basically, Josh McCown, they handed him the keys to the car and said, here, this is your job to lose. And what did he do? He lost it. Mike Glennon.
Drove the car to a wall.
Mike Glennon. And I get into this debate with people. People are saying Mike Glennon never had a chance. Mike Glennon did have a chance. And he played not to lose. He didn't play to win. He played not to lose. Right. And that is a different mentality of a quarterback because you're looking at Jameis Winston, who throughout his career, his college career, he plays to win. He wants to win. Mike Glennon plays not to lose. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying here? You've got 2 different mentalities. And you would see a play that Jameis Winston would try to put the ball here with his physical skills, where Mike Glennon would be like, no, let me run out of bounds here.
Throws with anticipation.
Right. And we've seen this. We've seen this time and time again. And I'm sorry. I know that sometimes the defense is giving up leads, but as a quarterback, it's still your job to come back and win the game. Mm-hmm. Put the team on your shoulders and win the game. Like an Andrew Luck. Like a Drew Brees.
Like a Matt Ryan, like a Russell Wilson, like a Joe Flacco. And again, if you doubt the fact that Winston can come in here and make this team a playoff team, then look back at your history. Look at the first year when the Indianapolis Colts drafted Andrew Luck. They were a 2-14 team. It took one player. Of course, they had a good team, but it wasn't a great team because, again, they were coming off a 2-14 season. What happens? They're a playoff team. The Atlanta Falcons, before they drafted Matt Ryan, were a terrible team. The year they draft him, he starts, they're a playoff team. Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, RG3 his first year. There have been cases where quarterbacks have been drafted the first year, and they come along and make their team a playoff team. What's any different here? There's nothing any different here. The question is, can this offensive line give him enough time? Because if they give Winston enough time, I am absolutely positive that he'll be able to complete those passes to a Mike Evans, to a Vincent Jackson, to an Austin Seferian-Jenkins.
Most definitely. And I wanted to get your power rankings going into the first game of the season. I know it's still early. We haven't even played the first preseason game for the NFC South. But, going in, I want to, we have our power. You've seen the power rankings for the NFL. I'd like to see your power rankings for the NFC South based on the moves that have been made in the offseason.
Well, my power rankings for the NFC South right now, I got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 1. I know that may shock a lot of people. A lot of people may say I'm a fan. I don't care what you have to say. I'm telling you right now, the Bucs are going to win this division because of having a second-year Lovie Smith's defense and adding Winston. Number 2, I think the Carolina Panthers right now, with Cam Newton back fully healthy, with some of the moves they made in the offseason, having Devin Funchess, always having that pretty good defense with Kuechly. I think they're going to be in the mix. The third team, I think, is the Atlanta Falcons. They had one of the worst defenses last year. They add Dan Quinn from Seattle. It seems like they're becoming a physically opposing team. You still have Matt Ryan. You still have Julio Jones. That defense you think may improve because they've done some things in the offseason and in the draft. And I think the New Orleans Saints right now are the last team in this division, and this is why. Anytime you get rid of the number one weapon in Jimmy Graham, and Drew Brees is not happy about it, that's not a good thing. On top of that, that's still one of the worst defenses in the NFL they had last year. On top of that, can Mark Ingram repeat what he did last year? I'm not so sure. And I'll even make this bold prediction. If the New Orleans Saints finish last in this division, I think there's going to be a lot of talk of Sean Payton being out of here, because ever since they won their Super Bowl, they really have not done anything after that. I mean, couple playoff appearances here and there, but I think there's some people kind of tired of Sean Payton because, look, last year, Drew Brees lost a lot of games in the fourth quarter for the New Orleans Saints, and his skills seem like they're regressing. So what do you do as an organization? You get rid of his top weapon and Jimmy Graham? That doesn't seem to make sense. Marcus Colston could be on the PUP list. It seems like he's kind of washed up. You have Brandon Cooks. You added C.J. Spiller, who's explosive when he can stay healthy, but the key word is healthy. So I'm not sure if the Saints are anything what they used to be. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. And, I mirror your power rankings. I did in the beginning.
Great minds think alike.
I'll be honest with you. I did have Carolina first because they've gone to the playoffs. They've repeatedly gone to the playoffs.
Right.
They have consistency in the front office, in the coaching, in pretty much everything with the exception of running back. Mm-hmm. I think that that's questionable. So for me, I do have Tampa, number one. I do have Carolina Panthers, number two, because they are the returning champions and they are the model of consistency in the NFC South. I do have the Atlanta Falcons. I think they can do nothing but go up. As long as you have a Julio Jones and, this new head coach that's come in and Matt Ryan, I think that they will always compete. So I do have them at the number 3 position. And number 4, I do have the New Orleans Saints. I think that, to go along with what you said, I seen Drew Brees's, it looks like his skill set has kind of eroded. I know he's throwing for a boatload of yards, but with his number 1 weapon out, it just remains to be seen what they can piece together with the salary cap issues that they continually have year after year, and they are able to get a free agent here and there, but they're just not able to put it all together. I just don't see them competitive this season, but I may be wrong. So those are my picks. And I did want to, at the end of the show, I know that we plan on going 30 minutes. We've gone a little bit over, but I did want to touch on this. The franchise that has really disappointed me is the San Francisco 49ers.
Agree.
And I know a lot of people may not agree with this, but the turnover in one season is historic. I have looked at their schedule because I have a couple of friends that are 49er fans, and I can only maybe see 3 to 4 games that they win this season. And that is horrible.
I think they could possibly be the worst team in the NFL because of the turnover that you talk about. I mean, you get rid of Jim Harbaugh, who's one of your winningest coaches. He takes the 49ers to 3 consecutive NFC championships, 1 Super Bowl appearance, really designed this offense around Colin Kaepernick. You have all these retirees. You have the linebacker retired, Patrick Willis, Moreland, Justin Smith retiring, now Aldon Smith. I mean, where's the talent at? You had talent and depth, and now it's all gone. On top of it, you're losing your coach, and you hire what was that, defensive line coach or linebacker coach over a defensive coordinator. I don't understand what the 49ers are doing at this juncture, but it's not great. And I'll give you some more inside information. I have somebody close to this 49er organization that said that anytime and every time Aldon Smith was at practice or any before that in his daily life, he was always tanked unless he had to be tested. So right there should show you that Smith has a lot of problems. And people, stop all this crap about the Buccaneers should sign Aldon Smith or a team out there should sign Aldon Smith. Aldon Smith has to get his life together. He has some major, major problems. And until he does that, if I'm an NFL franchise, I'm not touching him. I'm just not.
I'd avoid him like the plague.
Yeah.
I'm right there. I'm right there with you. But for me, that's been my disappointment of the season, was just watching this 49ers team. And it's not fair to the season ticket holders or the fans. I don't know if they're trying to tank this season and get a head coach and possibly get somebody else in the draft. I'm not sure what they're trying. I know the retirements are unexpected, but with this team, just some of the moves that they've made, and in the offseason, they're sitting there with $20 million plus in cap room, and they haven't been able to do anything.
Yeah, I guess they're depending on Reggie Bush and they're depending on Carlos Hyde. Those are both injury risks. Colin Kaepernick had a down year. I mean, it's not like they had such a terrible year where you fire your coach. I get it. He wanted to go to Michigan, but you kind of forced him out in this situation. Yeah. You forced him out, and he was one of your winningest coaches in history, and I just don't understand it. This is just a case of a general manager and owner thinking they have more responsibility of this team when really, and most likely, was Jim Harbaugh, who mostly did all this, had everything to do with their success.
Absolutely. Because if we look at the previous head coach, I cannot think. Please help me with this. What is his name?
Mike Singletary, the guy who couldn't play with Vernon Davis. I can't play with this guy. I can't coach him. Well, Jim Harbaugh seemed like he could coach him pretty well.
Yeah.
So, made him into a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, and Mike Singletary is a Hall of Famer. I mean, high football IQ, but he was unable to do anything with his team. And then enter Jim Harbaugh, who turns Alex Smith, who they're talking about getting rid of, turns him around and makes him into a great player. I think that Alex Smith should send a part of his check over to Harbaugh in Michigan, for helping him to get that big contract with Kansas City. Because if Harbaugh doesn't enter the picture, Alex Smith doesn't get that big money contract.
And then you look at the decision in 2012, I believe, at the middle of the year when Alex Smith goes 11 for 11 with completion percentage on Monday Night Football, gets hurt, and he has the foresight to put in Colin Kaepernick, and Kaepernick does nothing but throw touchdowns, add excitement.
Yep, that mobile quarterback. I think we lost him. Did we lose you? Oh, he'll be back on. And so basically that was what I was looking at, was the San Francisco 49ers. I'm really, like I said, disappointed in them. But our thing here, we talk about Bucs football. We do talk about NFL football as well. So there are a lot of different scenarios that we'll see. So I just wanted to kind of talk about what we'll be doing here in the future with Buc What You Heard. We're going to try to do the show on Saturday afternoon. We're moving it to Saturday afternoon permanent to see if we can get some consistency here. We will have some different guests on, but Peter Blake has been doing sports. He's been doing Tampa Bay Bucs sports for a long time, and he's somebody that I respect his opinion. We did last year. I know we were joking around, and you heard him take shots at me earlier about me picking the McCown and Glennon to do well with this Tampa Bay offense. But because I was giving him grief about Johnny Manziel, back in the day. But in all honesty, Peter Blake was the one who had the insight to say that Jameis Winston was going to be a Buccaneer, and he said this even back before the national championship game. He said this back before the playoffs for college. He said that he believes that Jameis Winston would be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer before anybody else had Jameis Winston on the radar. Peter Blake was that guy that said, hey, Jameis Winston will be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And you know what? My hat's off to him because he hit a home run on that one.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We had a little bit of technical difficulties here with the system here on the computer. I have no idea what's going on, so I had to get back on. But I appreciate that shout out.
Yeah, no worries. And please, if anybody, if you can get a chance, tune in to Tan Talk Radio. And Peter Blake's show is at 4 o'clock Eastern. Please, if you can call in, call in. It's totally a sports show. The thing I like about his show, unlike some of the other talk radio, and I'm not taking any shots at anybody, but he doesn't talk down at people, and he really gets that message out there, and he gives everybody a chance to talk because it is a fan show. So if you do get a chance, Saturday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern time, give him a call. Peter, what's that number?
Yeah, 727-441-3000 or 866-826-1340. Of course, if you're listening online, tantalk1340.com. If you have a handy-dandy smartphone, make sure you download the TuneIn Radio app. Look for the Tan Talk Radio Network. That's another way to listen to us. And you're right. Bring your passion, bring your excitement. Just don't bring any nonsense. It's a sports web with yours truly, Peter Blake, along with Sean the Sports Don, Angie Fox, and PJ Whitaker sometimes. But most of the time, it's yours truly along with Sean the Sports Don. And we have a lot of good times there. And we definitely invite the fans to talk football and talk whatever sports you want to talk about. We don't care if you're a Bucs fan, if you're a Raider fan, if you're a Jets fan, if you're a Bears fan, if you're even a Cowboy fan, we'll talk football with you anytime on Saturday afternoons from 4 to 5.
All right. Well, that should wrap it up for us today. And hey, Peter, thanks a lot. And like I was telling the listeners, we will be doing this right after your show on Saturdays.
Yeah.
And we'll definitely hit these podcasts. Maybe we can get Sean the Sports Don on. Who knows?
Yes.
We may get a celeb on there. Who knows?
We'll get him on there. Trust me. I'll get him on there. I'll tell him if he doesn't come on there, then he's off the sports web forever. He'll definitely be on.
All right. Well, hey, thanks a lot. And everybody, thanks for listening and have a good night.
All right. Thanks a lot.